In this video, I'll talk about AdeptiCon 2025 and my booty. I mean, like the booty that I brought back with me. You know what I'm talking about. Well, I'm back and somewhat rested up from AdeptiCon 2025 at its new home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was a really great time, as AdeptiCon always is, and it was so fun to meet and chat with all kinds of people over the 4.5 days, roughly, of the convention. I saw all kinds of new things and things that have been around for a while, but I've never seen them in person, and all kinds of stuff in between. The new facility is huge and will give AdeptiCon plenty of room to grow over the years to come. Though I was pretty drained by the whole thing, I'm already looking forward to next year. As I said, the new location was pretty great. The Baird Center in Milwaukee is humongous, and there's all kinds of hotels and restaurants and bars and more nearby. The old facility, in Schaumburg was pretty isolated out there where it was. Unfortunately, I kind of forgot to shoot much footage of the areas outside of the vendor hall, as I was in the vendor hall kind of a lot this year. But I did tour the place with the AdeptiCon crew back in May of last year. I'll try to remember to shoot more of the areas outside of the vendor and tournament halls next year so that, you can hopefully check it out and see more cool stuff. But instead of filming the building much, I instead filmed the awesome stuff in the building, mostly the wargaming events and the stuff available in the vendor hall. There were so many cool things to see, huge tournaments for big games like all the Warhammer properties, right? From like the most popular, sci-fi game, Warhammer 40,000, to the fantasy games like Age of Sigmar and the Old World, and even events for smaller games like Warhammer Underworlds. And some of the games in these events were live streamed and, on the internet and whatnot. So maybe you even watched some of them during the weekend. But it wasn't just Warhammer events at AdeptiCon. Actually, far from it. There were tons of other tourneys and events there and demos and stuff like that from other big properties like Star Wars Shatterpoint and Star Wars Legion, which Star Wars Legion specifically, I noticed, got a bunch of new product announcements, and probably, in my opinion, Star Wars Legion had some of the best-looking tournament tables in the entire place. And that's really saying something, because the tournament tables all across Adepticon are pretty amazing. But anyway, big properties like that, all the way down to kind of like smaller indie events all throughout the building. And much of the indie event terrain was just as awesome as the stuff from the big guys. Once I finally found the Grimdark Alley, it's a big room of indie games way on the other side of the facility, I found loads of beautiful terrain as well. This astounding Mordheim board made by Steve from the Hive Scum podcast was hosting games of different types and things like that all weekend long. And these 1490 Doom 2-foot circular boards were also busy most of the convention. There were all kinds of cool little indie games going on all around the facility, and it really makes the show something for everyone. And then there's the vendors. Now, I couldn't talk about all of them because there were a lot. It's a very big vendor hall, and I didn't even shoot video of all of them either, of course, but a lot of them did stand out to me. Tons of interesting games like Trench Crusade, which I've talked about here, obviously on the channel just recently, Pachow. They had a booth with a crazy demo board, and it was really something to see. It was also really cool to kind of touch base with the guys who, created the game and chat a little bit. And then there was Ravaged Star, which is the game from Mini Wargaming. They had a humongous booth, just full of miniatures, just tons and tons and tons of them, and basically full of people most of the time as well. Steel Rift was releasing more modular expansions for their game at the show. And then, of course, Corvus Belli was there with Infinity and the new fantasy game Warcrow. And Loot Studios had their new game, Malediction, and they were giving demos of it in their booth. The models were pretty interesting, I thought. And I also got to learn a little about the upcoming new edition of Conflict 47 from Warlord Games, which I'm also pretty excited about. I also felt like mech games kind of as a genre are getting bigger this year. Not physically, although some of them are, but I mean just there's more and more and more of them, right? There were a lot of fun different mech games, obviously Battletech, right, of course. But there was also Steel Rift, Flames of Orion, Blackout had some cool new mechs that they're adding into that game as well. And then there was also a cool new game called Arsenal in Blaster Magazine as well. There were also tons of hobby and terrain companies there as well. In paints, there was, of course, the Army Painter, which was a booth that I spent a lot of time at, talking to people, answering questions, even doing some painting demos as well. The new John Blanche paint sets, the 2 volumes of the John Blanche paint sets, were selling steadily over the entire weekend, which was also great to see. There were also some other great kind of hobby companies nearby the Army Painter booth that I saw, like Turbo Dork and also Game Envy. And then there were also like other YouTubers affiliated with hobby companies there as well, talking to folks and giving advice. Battle Foam sold out of my collab skirmish bags that they brought to the convention, and nearly everything else that they brought as well. And cool terrain companies showed off new stuff like this spectacular modular terrain from Monster Fight Club, which will be coming to crowdfunding in like a couple of months, I was told. It's really super cool, kind of cyberpunk, sci-fi looking stuff. Dwarven Forge was there with their high-end kind of pre-painted fantasy terrain. It was really cool to see it set up the way they did there in the booth. And then Gale Force 9 also showed up with a bunch of their, pre-painted terrain for sale as well. The vendor hall was almost too much stuff to see, and I always kind of found new things to look at as I would go through it. And speaking of the vendor hall, it is now the time in the video where I display my booty. I didn't really go crazy this year, and I kind of congratulate myself to some degree for not really buying into an entirely wholly new game system this year. I sometimes have a tendency to do that, but this year, kind of restrained myself. Anyway, one of the first things that I got on Wednesday night was this. This is upside down. There we go. This is for Russ and the Allfather. This was a little box that was handed out at the GW preview on Wednesday night. I swear I opened it. Oh, there we go. And it's just basically a single sprue in here. And it is a new Space Marine, like Space Wolf kit. They don't look super Space Wolfy. Like it's not, there's a couple little things here and there which make it like little trinkets kind of hanging off, like shoulder pad over here and a couple little things, but it's not really anything that when I first opened it up, I really expected it to be really super Space Wolfy, helmet off, big beard, all that kind of crazy stuff. But no, there's just a regular old beaky, well, not beaky. It's a regular Primaris helmet. Doesn't even have anything necessarily fancy going on, so I was kind of confused by that. But it's cool that they're heading into it after the talks and all that kind of stuff about the new Space Wolf stuff coming down the road. I mentioned Gale Force 9 a little bit ago, and from Gale Force 9, I got this cool Hex Tech tabletop ready painted terrain, and it is fortress walls for Trinity City, which I assume is probably like a setup. They've got a bunch of different scales for things and everything like that, but it's fully painted, and it is walls, which you could use for, actually the way you look at them, I think you can even use them for 28 millimeter if you want to, but they're really more designed for generally Battletech type stuff, or mech scale, 6 millimeter, whatever you want to call it. That's what I'm going to use them for anyway. There's 10 of these, 2 of these, 1 of those, 1 of those. Basically 24 different pieces, including some gates. These says that the models are shown at 90%, so they're a little bigger than this in the real world. But it's a nice little add-on. If I wanted to go through and weather them a little bit more, I'd probably airbrush around the edges a little bit with like a bit of brown, like a nice brown speed paint, because it'll stay transparent and it won't cover too much, but it'll grunge it down towards the bottom. I'll probably do that before I deploy them, but I'm really looking forward to using these in some mech games. One of the earliest purchases, I think on Thursday that I made, I stopped at the Games Plus booth. Games Plus is a really nice gaming store in Northern Illinois, and they always have a booth at AdeptiCon. And I don't know if they make anything themselves, but they bring a bunch of stuff to retail and whatnot. And this is the Iron Core Valkyr Heavy Troopers from Wargames Atlantic. I have the non-Heavy Troopers from these guys, also from Wargames Atlantic. And I have never seen these in the flesh. So when I saw them on the shelf there, I was like, oh, well, this will be real easy to pick up and be a lot of fun. They're very cool models. You get, I don't know how many you get in this box. 12? 12 multi-part hard plastic models. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with them, but probably something cool, my hope is. They're just nice and slightly chonky, but not too chonky, but they're also not so skinny. The other Valkyr troopers, I feel like, are just a little bit kind of, I don't want to say spindly, but these guys have really got a nice feel to them. So adding some of these guys to those other guys can make some nice variation in some sort of miniature agnostic thing I want to do in the future. Like I said, Trench Crusade had a booth at AdeptiCon, but they weren't selling the book because the book's not done yet. They weren't selling the models because like the models are STLs unless you're getting them print on demand from them, and those are in progress. But they were selling T-shirts, which unfortunately when I got there they were already out of extra large. But they were also selling art prints and things like that, and they were also selling these dope patches. So I was able to get some of these. This is a Trench Pilgrims patch. It's got Velcro on the back and a little bit of extra red stuff that I didn't probably mean to put on there. And then there's Black Grail as well, and that one's pretty cool. It's interesting because these two are like traditionally kind of embroidered, the way that, but this one here is like printed, I think, or it's embroidered differently. I can't really tell. I don't know if this is going to help, but like you can kind of tell the difference like that. You can see the stitching moving in it, and this one, I don't know, it's interesting. And it doesn't, you can't really feel the bumps of the embroidery and stuff like that on it, so I feel like it's almost maybe printed. This one, which was just a plain old Trench Crusade one, this one is definitely just printed. Just this crazy, I don't know what kind of creature that is, maybe a manticore or something on a piece of, artillery, as one does. Anyway, all these are Velcro backed, so you can stick them to your Velcro thingy on your bag that you carry your models in, or if you got Velcro stuff on your jacket, or whatever you want to do. Speaking of indie games and also mech games, this is Flames of Orion, and this is the final 1.0 version. Last year at Adepticon, I picked up an alpha version, what they were calling like an ash can. It was like stapled together. This has got what they call a perfect bound, glued, binding, and it is predominantly black and white. And it's mainly because of the aesthetic, because the cover's black and white, back cover's black and white, most of the inside is black and white, but up in the front, it's got some full color bits with different cool, mech painting stuff, things like that. But yeah, Steve from the Hive Scum podcast, I've also talked about the Hive Scum podcast on here before in the TMAs, either last year or the year before, Pachow has published this game, and I wanted to pick it up because I knew there were going to be a limited number. This is number 3 of 100 of these kind of editions that were ready to go to Adepticon. Now, there's going to be more that are going to be available. You'll be able to buy them online, but these were the ones that we're able to pick up at Adepticon. But this is the new final version with, I think, pretty cool artwork. It's almost got like a bit of an Akira vibe maybe, but with like, mechs, which is pretty neat. There was also this very indie looking box, which I really dig, and it's got mechs in it. Now, I bought mechs from him last year that were sculpted by Gardens of Hecate, if you look her up on the internet. And instead, what I got was a bunch of whatever this is, this paper stuff. Let me get that out of there. There's a bunch of mechs in here. Now, these are 3D printed, but that means I don't have to scrape mold lines and I don't have to build them, which is fine by me. There was also, I think, some poured resin ones or maybe metal ones. I think they had those available too. But these are wholly new mechs, different than the ones that I already painted last year. I'm really super looking forward to putting these onto bases and painting them. And now I got to figure out what to... Oh, and there's also a pack of dice that I picked up from them too, which were, they're not super custom dice like I generally don't like. They're just basically cool stars from the logo on the 6s and stuff or whatever, and the 10s on there. But, you want to help out where you can. So you buy the fancy dice if you can. I do like scenery. I'm a big fan of it. And I stopped by the Monster Fight Club booth. They had a big size booth towards the back of the hall. And like I said before, they were showing off this amazing stackable kind of like cyberpunk side of sci-fi kind of terrain that's going to be going to crowdfunding in a while. But they've been making really cool like plastic shipping containers for you to use in terrain for a number of years now. But one thing that they haven't had available at shows that I've been to recently that they do now is this new HAB unit containers. So these are the same size as the different colored pre-printed ones that they've been selling for some time, but these have like, there's like a food stand, there's like little windows, there's like air conditioning units, there's all kinds of stuff like that, so I can paint these and mix them in with my other ones to make them stand out and just have more things going on. There's 5 of them in here. It's a pretty hefty box, and yeah, it's pretty cool if you're interested in kind of like adding a little bit more of the sort of shipping container aesthetic to your gaming. I also mentioned a game before when I was talking about mechs, and it was called Arsenal, and it was in Blaster Magazine. So here is your Blaster Magazine, and you can see it's volume 7, and it says Arsenal right there. There's a very cool looking mech on the cover. That's a great piece of artwork, not much on the back. And inside, it is an entire game for Arsenal. Arsenal is a game in which you usually have a couple, it's a 28mm scale game. You have some people, some normal human type people walking around, and then every once in a while, a robot drops down and either helps you out or attacks you, something like that. It's got a bit of a Titanfall vibe, I think, to it. But yeah, pretty much this entire magazine is just really cool stuff for Arsenal. It's all about Arsenal. It used to be when Blaster first came out, it was add-ons for games like Gaslands and This Is Not a Test and stuff like that. Some of the like Omega Wolves, some of the Ash Barker games. And now every single issue is basically a different game. And this one is Arsenal, and it's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to checking it out. And I believe on the website there's also access to, they sell a bunch of STL files so that you don't have to like necessarily kit bash these big robots together if you don't want to. Like the regular 28mm people, you can probably use whatever you want, but the robots are going to be kind of specific. I kind of love airbrushing, and I try to get better at it. When I originally bought an airbrush, it was about priming, when it's winter or too humid or whatever. It's, Wisconsin. It's either one or the other most of the time. But then I got into doing zenithols and that kind of stuff. And then I've recently started getting into kind of stencils and things. And there's this company called Anarchy Models. And I see them at Adepticon almost every year. And this year I bought some more stuff from them. So you've got like, here's a super micro negative hex mesh, which is hard to say. And you just put that over the model and airbrush through it. You're going to get this crazy pattern. They're not sticky. They're not like... Sometimes, like, they did sell some that are kind of sticky on the back, kind of like a Post-it note, and you can stick them and reposition them and stuff like that. These are just laser-cut plastic, I assume. Here's a negative hex micro instead of super micro, so you can kind of see, again, the little pattern that you're going to be able to get on there. And then for something that's a little bit more naturalistic, we've got Creature Features #1 modeled. And these are just basically random spots. You can put this over any kind of monster, creature, whatever, to give it like a textured, kind of bumpy, almost sort of look. Like if you think about like lizards and frogs and things like that, they're speckled. And so now I can do that with this stuff. And these are real big speckles. You've got #7 bigger modeled, which are going to be everything from here to these pretty big size ones, and they're really cool. I just leave them near my airbrush, and then whenever I think about using them, I just whip them out and kind of use them, and it works out really well. You can clean them off, I think, with something if you need to. Probably more information on their website. The company Cromlech never seems to come to Adepticon. I think that's based out of Poland. I think that's where they are, is Poland. They never really seem to come to conventions that I go to here in the States, but very frequently there are retailers who have their stuff in their booth. One of the retailers I stopped at was a company called Badger Games, and they're based out of Wisconsin, strangely enough. And they almost always carry a bunch of Cromlech stuff. So I picked up some cool, what are these here? Chem Trooper heads, which are just basically dudes in gas masks and stuff like that. I think those are going to work out real well for any kind of kit bashing stuff that I need to do for Trench Crusade. There were a couple little just neat banners and stuff like that you can stick on things. And made all this is poured resin. We've got a whole bunch of these kind of big chonky backpacks that work out pretty well for customizing and making your people look like they're actually carrying things around and going places and not just a dude out on the battlefield. I guess I'd never seen anything quite like this before, but these are basically suppressors. Just like if you could just cut the tip off of, let's say, like a regular bolt rifle or a bolt gun for your Space Marine and put this on there and just make it look like it's silenced. I don't know how you would silence a bolt gun, but let's say you could. I don't know. It's possible. Or just other kinds of weapons as well. It's just a neat little thing. And then lastly, this thing is like It's basically like there's a dead tree, and then there's like a post, and then a bunch of little signs pointing different directions, so you know how far it is to Garbageville, and then it's this much longer to Scumtown or whatever. And that's going to make a neat little piece of terrain that I'll build at some point, hopefully kind of soon, because I've got an idea for it. I stopped by the Blackout booth, and I was very glad to see that they had a lot of stuff going on there. And I was able to pick up the UN Strike Force expansion. And it is, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 new models, along with unit cards and all that kind of jazz and bases for them all. And these are multi-part poured resin instead of the 3D printed stuff. And it's going to be kind of interesting to see like what the mold lines look like and all that kind of stuff and how they go together. But they've always had great sculpts for all the stuff that I've used for them in the past. And I'm very interested in giving these a try in Blackout. I'm glad to see them going, like, this is fancy packaging. This is something you would see probably at a store, right? Their early stuff when they first started were these kind of white cardboard boxes with a sticker on the front, which was fine. And, this costs more, but I like the old stuff with the white. But when you go to a store, if you see this versus just like a white paper box with a sticker on it, your average consumer is going to kind of probably more gravitate to this. And now some rapid fire on the last 3 pieces here. I got this baggie of stuff from the folks over at War Scenery. You can almost see the name. It's right there. I bought this cool piece of terrain. It is a like 6mm kind of power station for like mech games and things like that. And they also threw in this cool little robot that kind of looks, I don't know, looks like a super old school Necron guy. I think I've unfortunately busted off his axe, so I'm going to have to glue that back on. But I got that, and then the folks from 1490 Doom gave me one of their metal miniatures of the Warrior Priest, which was very nice. That's a big chunk of metal in there, and there's some extra bits floating around, so I'm going to glue that together and mess with it. They are producing models now, but they're also... And they're going to have a printed book eventually soon. I keep seeing ads for it on Facebook and stuff like that. But it was good to actually face-to-face chat with those guys and talk a little bit. And then this is a shirt from the Brush Wielders Union. I've been a member of the Brush Wielders Union for some time now. Probably, I think I signed up for it maybe 2 or 3 Adepticons ago. It's like a Patreon thing, and then it lets you get into a Discord, and you also get letters every month, and there's like a sticker and a book, and you put your sticker in for things you're doing, all that kind of stuff. They're a great group of people. If you're interested in looking for like accountability and things like that and keeping yourself on track, you may want to take out a look at the Brush Wielders Union. I'll put a thing down in the below, and you can click on it down there. So that's my booty. That's pretty much the stuff that I brought home. I also brought home tons and tons and tons of stickers. People were handing out stickers, and I got business cards and things like that. Got to talk to a lot of people. It's always the best part, honestly. Sure, it's cool to buy, stuff and play demos, and probably if you're into tournaments, it's pretty cool to be in tournaments and all that kind of stuff. But the real thing about Adepticon is just meeting other kind of like-minded people who are into wargaming like you are, or maybe slightly different than you are, and maybe they teach you something. Maybe all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is cool. I like this kind of indie game stuff. Or maybe you're like, you know what? I would like to get into a tournament someday, and that's what I'm going to work towards, or whatever. All the different things in between. So I hope if I got to meet you at Adepticon, I hope you had a good Adepticon, and I hope that I didn't say anything weird to you. Lord knows, sometimes that happens. I hope you had a good trip back if you did. And for those of you that didn't get to go this year, if you're thinking about it, maybe start saving up for next year. Milwaukee, downtown Milwaukee's also got lots of great food, stuff like that too. So that's also something to think about. I think there's a really nice museum as well. There's all kinds of stuff to do in Milwaukee. You can go to a Bucks game. There was like 2 or 3 Milwaukee Bucks games going on, home games during the convention. And I think there was maybe some AEW wrestling as well. There was so much to do and so little time to do it. So anyway, again, if you get the chance and you'd like to go, you should take a look at their website, AdeptiCon.org, and find out more. And if you like videos like this that are about going to conventions and stuff like that, hit the like button down there. A little depressmentation of the old like button is always appreciated by me. And if you want to see more videos like this every single Friday, hit that subscribe button while you're down there as well. Thanks for watching.